Hi there, my name is Nina Goradia and I'm a Somatic Experiencing practitioner. Today I want to speak with you about insecurity, or a feeling of not being good enough, not feeling safe enough. This can really affect us in multiple ways. But in this video, I want to talk especially about the feeling of worthlessness or not feeling good enough. It's a very triggering word to just even hear that. There's so much stigma around this, and it's such a tender, tender emotion, but it's pretty universal. And so when we're, not seeing people's insides and we're comparing our insides with other people's outsides, we might not realize how common this is, but it's the number one thing I see in my office when I work with clients. And so what I want to talk about today is how to be with this. Oftentimes we have these illusions that if only I could get this, if only I could be successful, if only I could have the relationship I want, then I don't have to feel insecure. But it's actually an illusion. A lot of these things that we get, while we might feel great when we first get them, they're oftentimes just a band-aid. They cover up the wound, but this is a wound that can only be healed from the inside out, because the moment that relationship ends, or the moment we're just even unsure if that person cares about us, if there's any arguments, suddenly that insecurity is going to arise. The moment the job is announcing there might be some layoffs, again, we have that insecurity. So the job or the relationship is actually not what gives us a relief to our insecurity. It just helps us not face it a little bit longer. And so there is something we can do. We can face it directly. Instead of running away from the feeling and trying to cover it up with external things, we can run towards it. We can look for it, in fact, and we can try to find it and identify it as an emotional sensation in our bodies all the time, because it comes up in many different ways. So regarding a relationship, it might come up in a certain way. Maybe I feel that in my heart. With a job, it might come up a different way. Maybe I feel something in my stomach, some anxiety around that. And so we want to start becoming aware, what is my internal experience of these external experiences? Because I'll only ever experience them as an emotion within myself. And then if I'm afraid of that emotion, if I'm afraid of feeling this emotion, I'm going to try to change my external situation so that I can change my internal experience. But what if there was a way to go direct? What if I can just look for this internal experience and work on my resistance to feeling it and allow myself to feel it as tender as it can be? So in this example, if I'm feeling, oh, I don't feel good enough, I just feel worthless, and it takes a lot of honesty to go that tender and vulnerable with yourself to even admit it. And then you feel it. Okay, where do I feel that? Okay, it's a little bit here in my chest. As I allow this feeling, this primary experience, to just play through, let it to just arise. Think of it as your inner child. Think of it as the part of you that has felt this way a long time ago. And you're just showing up for that part of you. You're caring for this part of you. You're holding space for this part of you without judgment. And so this child just needs this place to feel safe, to feel his or her emotion. And so we give that to ourselves, non-judgmentally looking at our emotions. This is a practice in self-love, loving and accepting all aspects of our experience, even the ones that we've been taught are not good, the ones that we have been conditioned to push away. Feelings of terror, feelings of fear, anger, sadness. Believe it or not, when we allow ourselves to feel all of these through, we experience feeling the fullness of our true selves, the fullness of all of our experiences. We're not trying to fight away any part of our internal experience. We're not at war within ourselves. When we're friends with our feelings, we can experience internal harmony. So we start to get curious about these feelings inside of us. And we start to even have dialogues with them. Just noticing, oh, I have a reflexive fear of you feeling. I notice this is my pattern. This is my baseline pattern with you. But I want to transcend this pattern. I want to investigate if it's even true. I want to investigate if my beliefs about you are even valid. and we start to really look. We don't look at the conditioning anymore as the guidance, the conditioning where most of us were taught some emotions are good, some emotions are bad. And we look at what is my actual experience in this moment. I want to know for myself what is happening within me. And as we get curious about our true experiences, that no one has told us what we are and what we're experiencing, but that we directly figure out for ourselves, then these emotions are just not as scary. They come and go. They don't mean anything about us. And so I really encourage you to start getting curious about your internal experience, having the courage to feel deeply. There's nothing wrong with it. It can't hurt you. But we do need to step into these sort of things slowly. So I encourage you to look at things like the resourcing videos, the breathing exercise videos, because as we have more capacity to feel, we're able to feel through some of these difficult feelings. And so I want to show you something here. If you think about this cup as your emotional resiliency container, well, when it's small, when we don't have a lot of capacity because of trauma, because not enough self-care, lots of stress, then the traumas inside, they're really squished and they're overflowing and they spill out. But as we do things that are nourishing for ourselves, the container opens up. And then the traumas, the emotions, they have more space to maneuver, and you have more space to be able to look at them and not be so close where it feels like they are you, where you're identifying with them. So as you work on building your emotional resiliency container, you're going to experience a lot more peace internally. And so regarding feeling not good enough or worthless, first of all, what you need to know is there's no such thing. It's just arbitrary standards that society has tried to impose on us that seep into our conditioning. We buy into it, and then we make a correlation that it means something about who we are. None of it's true. All of us have our intrinsic worth. It's just that sometimes we feel a certain way because we're buying into an incorrect thought, a false thought. And so another aspect of this is disproving things around this. I've got a video on that, and I'll link it right over here. And so when we disprove it and when we feel it through, that's when we become free of it. Now, there might be different angles. There might be certain instances where I felt not good enough a certain way, and that comes up a different way in my body than another experience. And so there's multiple angles to be worked with through this. But as we feel these things through, we become free of them. We become free of this game where we're trying to not feel our internal experiences by chasing external things so that we run away from ourselves. And so I encourage you to start exploring some of these things. Now, if you have a trauma history, if it feels unsafe to be in the body and feel through these things, do this with a therapist and do it safely. You don't want to get re-traumatized. But if you are feeling pretty stable and you want to just start exploring, start to get curious about what's happening in your internal experience. And when things get too intense regarding this feeling, it often gets covered up with anger or anxiety, which are defense emotions, which I've talked about in a previous video, and I'll link that up here too. But look at the emotion underneath these things, which is the feeling of not being good enough, of not being enough. Worthlessness, you can think of it as unworthiness, as shame. There's many different names for this feeling, but it's universal, and it's one of the most difficult feelings that we deal with as humans. So once we work on releasing this, there's a whole different world out there where then we might be doing things in the external world because we like them, because we want to, because that's what it feels like the desire from our heart wants, rather than, oh, I'm just living my life in these ways so that I don't have to feel a certain part of myself. So I'll leave it here. Please feel free to ask me any questions below and let me know how it goes. If you try this, drop your comments in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next video.